I'm not trying to say the medical system is perfect, far from it. But you know, what's going on with the anti-vax movement is, as a professional term, cuckoo bananas.
I'm Miranda Rake.
And I'm Sarah Wheeler, and this is The Mother of It All, where we take on motherhood through the lens of culture and culture through the lens of motherhood.
Hello, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah. How are you?
Well, I'm sneezing from all the pollen.
Yeah, I bet you have a cute sneeze.
Face itches.
My husband and his family have some kind of like genetic, or it could be nurture, really loud sneeze. And like, because I'm a HSP or whatever you want to call it.
Yes,
he'll be like, it's coming. And I'm like, I'm going in another room. And if I don't cover my ears, it takes like 30 minutes to kind of re-regulate. So I appreciate your tender sneezes.
Thank you. Yeah, David also sneezes pretty loud, and his dad sneezes very, very loud. And we've been together long enough that it's like we got together when he was still living at home. So we used to make fun of his dad's sneeze together when he lived in his parents' basement.
But then he was like,
and now he does it. Yeah, he sneezes like his dad sneezes like the Cowardly Lion.
It's like that. Yeah. Sorry, I got to work on my Cowardly Lion. I was thinking about he's always vibrating. I have a question for you. I hope you're not allergic to it. How is your like Instagram fast going? I don't know if it's a fast or it's just a complete lifestyle change.
Well, it's permanent because you
feeling?
Delete it. Yeah. It's great. I love it. I don't miss it one little bit. I think that it was many years coming, right? Like, I think many years ago, I deleted it from my phone. And then I did this dumb thing where I would like re-download it when I wanted to post something. Usually if I'd like written a piece that I wanted to like tell everybody about or whatever.
You're like, I'll just spend 15 minutes once a week putting this on and then taking it off again.
And then taking it off. So that was sort of, I guess I did that for like 4 years. And then, so the permanent deletion is really hard. Like you have to delete it. And then it does this thing when you finally figure out how to like completely delete your account. It's like, okay, you've deleted your account. Like you get this email and it's like, and in 30 days, like you have 30 days to like think about it, basically. Like they force this like period of like, are you sure? Are you sure? And you're like, yeah, no, yes. But like that 30 days has now lapsed.
Have you heard John Early has this bit about like the Apple like asking you to give permission to like share all your data basically, and how like you could not share your data, but it's like this really long complicated thing, or you can just say allow, and like how it just breaks you down psychologically until you're just like allow, oh God, allow. So I'm proud of you that you withstood that and
thank you.
Like, I mean, there's a lot of money being spent trying to keep you from not doing that. So
yes. Yeah.
Bravo.
You know, I don't think that, what's interesting is like, I was thinking a lot about our conversation that we had about it at the time when I was like doing it. And, you do let go of a lot of things. Like, I think there are like writers and editors and probably important like professional connections that I have lost by leaving that platform. But in this moment of like broad societal collapse, I feel like who cares? You know?
Sure. Yeah. Well, also it ties into the Judith Viorst book that you're obsessed with, the like necessary losses of like, making hard choices about parenting or about your lifestyle does come with costs. And like when you don't recognize those things, it actually, it's harmful, right? Like it keeps you from making good decisions. But if you can accept that, like, of course there's losses, of course you miss out on shit. And like makes it feel more like, I don't know, make you have more equanimity about it.
Yes. And I think also you realize that you're constantly choosing things. And so what is lost also is like the time suck. Like it sucked time from my life. Yeah. Now it doesn't get to do that anymore. And so the trade-off is like, sure, I professional growth, whatever, but maybe I'm not interested in professional growth that requires me to be on this platform.
Right. You want to spend your time reading 100,000 words about the MAHA movement.
Heck yeah.
Which is, that deep, uninterrupted thinking. Yeah, the part that I'm realizing now with the social media is how much it kind of like waters down my friendship juju. Yeah. Like I'm whatever. There's lots of talk about like, you know, whatever our parasocial relationships, friendships and whatever. And I like those things. But beyond that, it's like I noticed that like the spark that I have for making kind of friend connections and like kind of having like flirting with my friends gets basically thinned out and sent out to social media. And then I don't get those moments with my friends, and I also don't get it back. Because it's just kind of like for everyone. Like the other day, okay, I have to shout out our friends, Sebastian and Miriam, who have been picking up our son at 8:15 and taking him to school so that our daughter, who has inherited my inability to like move at all in the morning, and it drives her brother fucking insane, and they just fight every morning, and we like start every day in like a, you know, collective
familiar
hell.
Yeah.
So that she can just kind of do her thing and not make him late. And we've been doing it for 2 days, and it's the most beautiful thing. And yesterday I was just in charge of my daughter, and I drove her to school, and we were still kind of late. Like I've told you about the gate on one side of the school that like closes anytime between 8:30 and 8:35. And you never know. And if you miss it, you have to like walk of shame all the way around the block.
Yeah.
But we made the gate. And we don't always do that. And so like I wrote in my mind this like acceptance speech about having made the gate, you know, that was like, I never at 8:20 this morning, I didn't think of myself as someone who could make the gate, but because, you know, and I didn't do it alone. Right. And I like wrote this whole, and I thank God in the end, of course. And I was just like, I got to put this on, like, I got to post this, you know, it was like, that was my, and then I was like, no, this is like for my friends. This is like part of what me being in their lives, take it or leave it, it is about, right? And instead I'm just like funneling it this way.
Yeah.
Or I found a piece of paper in my daughter's writing the other day, like her little first grade writing, that just said, I am a vampire. And I was like, I'm putting this on Instagram. But like 10 years ago, I would have just like sent it to my brother and like kind of whatever, like been building our relationship. Well, that's cute little ways.
Cute, like, so another friend of mine left Instagram at the same time I did, and I
just pictured you two like holding hands and jumping off, just walking
together. Away.
It's very beautiful. Walking into the ocean.
Since we were in third grade, we've been really good friends, and so
step one, lifelong bond, have a partner. Yes. Okay,
I do recommend that.
Get off,
but Instagram. She doesn't live where I live, and so. What's been kind of fun is like she and I have just been texting each other like videos and pictures of our kids. Yeah. And I know people do like Marco Polo, you know.
I like Marco Polo. I have a faraway bestie that's how we communicate.
So I feel like it is a way of having like, you know, the good things of Instagram, but it's much more intimate. And it's like, obviously I never stopped texting people, but I do feel like
you're not like writing letters by candlelight now. No, like we're not asking for like a full on life change.
No, but I have gone a lot deeper. I posted about this, like going, I've always wanted like a light phone or like a dumb phone.
Oh, you know, but you know about
so I've dumb phoned my phone. Yes, I do. And so I've dumb phoned. So I've got a 15-minute limit for Safari a day and a 15-minute limit for texting, which are the two biggest things I do on my phone. And I made the screen boring, like black and white.
Right. That 15 minutes, that makes me squeamish, but I'm really proud of you.
Plenty. And you can always say ignore limit, like if you're in the middle of something.
Ignore. Yeah, I've been I've just been for like 2 days doing my thing, turning it off and putting it in another room. I'm not talking about like keeping myself from the internet. I can do that on my computer. I can procrastinate there, but like I was double doing it on my phone, often at the same time. And I was like, I think I'm going to have an aneurysm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
It's not
Thanks
pure.
for that.
It's not all pure, but it's
okay. I strive to jump off that cliff with you, but we'll see. I'll keep you posted.
I think it's all a push and pull, right? I'm sure I'll fall down and get back up again.
If you're enjoying this episode of The Mother of It All, consider becoming a paid subscriber by going to motherofitall.substack.com, and you'll get monthly bonus episodes and more. If you can't spare $5 a month, it's free and makes a huge difference for us when you share, rate, and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit our bookshop storefront by going to bookshop.org and searching for Mother of It All. You'll find all of the books we mention here, as well as our favorite motherhood books and general recommended reading. Now, back to our episode.
Well, Sarah, should we bring on our guest?
Yes,
that we're
please.
very excited to talk to.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm a little starstruck.
I know, we are. So, okay, well, today we've got Jessica Grose.
She said we could call her Jess.
We can call her Jess.
That's what I'm going to do.
We're going to call her Jess. So if you don't know, which I think most of our listeners do, but Jessica Grose is an opinion writer at the New York Times. And she is the author of Screaming on the Inside, The Unsustainability of American Motherhood. I think it's fair to say that she's considered to be an OG among those of us who write about millennial motherhood. And we're very excited that she's here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And do not be starstruck. I'm a gremlin.
Oh, good.
In basically every way, shape, or form, but I appreciate that you've read me and it means a lot.
Well, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but like particularly during the pandemic, there were definitely days where like I was like, am I a ghost? Like, am I even here? And then I would read something that you wrote and be like, no, I exist. So, you know, it's you're a gremlin that's made a difference for a lot of parents.
I mean, it is crazy to think that was 5 years ago. And all that has happened since then. And I think it leads directly to a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So, okay, before we jump into the MAHA, we always ask, who is caring for your kids right now?
So both my kids are not in school because it is Good Friday. And my older daughter is caring for herself because she is almost 13. Yeah. So she is out and about with her friends in the neighborhood. I don't know where they are because I don't care. She is old enough to manage herself, bopping around the neighborhood. I'm guessing it is her holy trinity of Starbucks, Sephora, and Marshall's. It's probably one of those places.
We have a lot in common. I'm more of a Pete's fan, but I did take my daughter to Sephora for the other day, and she was like she had like the little sample pods ready for me, like the little applicators, and she was giving me like yay or nay on lip stuff, and I was like, this is my heaven.
Yeah, I'm guessing one of those three places. And my younger daughter is with my husband at the Bronx Zoo because he took the day off to hang with her. So
that's nice.
Great zoo.
Yeah, and it's actually really great. It's finally sunny here in New York. Everybody is having good spring vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good.
This like first spring day in New York is like should be a national holiday.
It's going to be almost 80 tomorrow, and let me tell you, people are going to lose their minds.
Yeah,
on a Saturday, there will not be a inch of blanket space available.
No, and the people are going to be wearing no clothes. It's going to be just there. The guns will be out. Like everyone will be sandals. Like
we've been having that here, and like. My son was running around the playground yesterday. So like everyone's playing after school for a really long time. And like all the first grade boys just ripped their shirts off and we're like running. I mean, the energy was like a whole next level and it was adorable. And he was like, oh, I just love not wearing a shirt. Like, can I keep not wearing a shirt for the walk home? I was like, sure, I guess.
My younger daughter hated pants for so long. Like the second she came home from school, she would just take her pants off. She was like, God, I've been wearing these all day. Like,
the hardest thing about pants is that you have to wear them all the time.
And it was like, I get it. I mean, she still will change into shorts when she comes home. But like when she was like 5, she would just get stripped down her shirt and underwear. That was her home mode. And, I totally get it. It was like, I've had to deal with these pants all day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we all feel that way. So
Miranda wears yoga pants. Sorry, I just had she might not know what we're talking about.
I never outgrew that impulse, basically. My daughter right now, she is underwearless at home.
Oh, yeah. Mine also has been going commando. Out in the world.
Well, it's okay until we end up out in the world. Like we end up out in the world where I forget that she didn't have the undies, and then it's a bit of a thing. But we're working on it. I don't know where I am on it.
As we are with all things, right?
Yes. So we wanted to talk about a piece Jess, that you wrote last year that has become ever more relevant in the new reality.
Yeah.
So you
warned
wrote
us.
a piece called "The Kind of Moms Who Fall for Make America Healthy Again." And in the piece, you detailed your long history with covering parental vaccine skepticism, and then later tracking COVID skeptical moms on social media. So these women don't initially seem to be aligned clearly with any party. Like, you write that you kind of thought of them as like generally liberal leaning, kind of hippie type moms. And then the rise of Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA, and the people who came out of the woodwork to align themselves with it really challenged this like hippie assumption, this like liberal hippie assumption that you had. And then in September of 2024, before your piece came out, The Atlantic's Elaine Godfrey wrote about her own struggle to merge the hippie moms who prefer herbal tinctures and liquid vitamins to vaccines with a far right ideology. Like, it just wasn't, she couldn't square the circle. And she concluded that the MAHA congruence seems tactical and temporary. But a month later, in October of 2024, you argue that the temporariness was not temporary. You were feeling like, no, this is happening. And of course, now here we are in April of 2025, and it really seems like you were correct. It's really pretty clear. So you seem to have a better understanding of something that I'm really struggling to wrap my head around, but that feels so important to understand about this cultural, political moment in our country. So what is it that unites the decidedly crunchy moms like the Rudy Judes and wannabes of the world with like Marjorie Taylor Green? Like, one of them looks like a sentient carcinogen and one looks like she's never even heard of food dye. So what?
The nicest thing you ever said about Marjorie Taylor Green.
I was well put.
So what is going on? What unites them?
It's a fundamental individualism, and it is also a distrust of mainstream systems of all kinds, right? So even when the most prominent avatars of the anti-vax movement, 10, 15 years ago, were not politically coded as right-wing, anti-vaccine, anti-government sentiment was always present on the right wing. The current measles outbreak in Texas is, as far as I know, among a community that has always distrusted vaccines. So it's the sort of horseshoe theory of the far right and the far left having a lot more very, very far right and very, very far left. We're not talking about like the typical person. It is still, whenever I talk about it, I always want to make clear, vaccine's still very popular. Most parents do not want their kids to get polio and or measles. So we are talking a minority, and unfortunately somewhat growing minority, but still, like, I never want to freak people out that it's like the majority of people around you. No, that's not true. Hopefully it will never be true, but I can't predict the future. So like I said, going back, a decade or so, the most prominent avatars of the anti-vax movement, sort of lefties, like RFK himself was, pro clean water, pro environmental justice, all of this stuff. COVID was really the turning point where you saw a movement that had been fomenting on the right. So there was this sort of vaccine freedom. They used a lot of the same rhetoric as the abortion rights movement, my body, my choice. But it was primarily sort of like an individualistic, privacy-based movement, which is more right-wing coded. They were sort of ready for that. They existed already, and they were sort of battling laws already in 2019, 2018. You saw these anti-vax, very far right-wing people battle vaccine mandates because they claimed some of the vaccines were made with, were studied on embryonic cells or stem cells. So that was one sort of plank that they were trying before COVID. Obviously, COVID was this period of intense upheaval where vaccination became incredibly politicized and then became right-wing coded. And it became associated with this sort of usually evangelical Christian, very privatized everything, individualized everything movement. So it was anti-public schools, anti just anything that was a societal institution. So that's sort of the intellectual root of it. It's just anti-institution. I know what's best as an individual. The death of expertise, which affects so many different parts of our society right now. So that's sort of one aspect of it. And then I think for people who are not especially political, often they fall down the anti-vax rabbit hole because they have had a horrible experience, a horrible direct experience with mainstream medicine. Yeah. So typically in their postpartum period or while they're pregnant or when their child is very small, they have an experience of feeling really unheard, having their legitimate questions or complaints dismissed, belittled. So I'm not trying to say the medical system is perfect, far from it. But you know, what's going on with the anti-vax movement is, as a professional term, cuckoo bananas.
Can I ask a clarifying question about that, Jess?
Yes.
That, like, you know, okay, so that makes sense to me, right? Like that a horrible experience would lead you to mistrust medicine. I mean, I mistrust, you know, medical systems in a lot of ways. I've had tons of not great experiences. But also, like, my understanding, which you can, you know, reject and inform, is that most of the women who are kind of MAHA moms are white, and many of them are affluent. And what we know in this country is that when you're white and affluent, you can still be fucked over by the medical system. But you are much more likely to have an experience like that if you are, for example, you know, a Black mom or an Indigenous mother, you know. And so, but I don't see those people becoming on a large scale part of this movement. So what's kind of adding into that is making it like narrowing it down to this certain group of people who have been wronged?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is definitely an affluent movement. I think racially it is definitely predominantly white, but though you will see, you know, anti-vax influencers who are not white. I think it is feeling like, I can't believe this is happening to me, of all people for whom the system should work. I think that is a little part of it. And also a knowledge that you can have pretty good baseline health already because you have access to so many things like good food. You probably live in a place that has pretty clean air and pretty clean water. Right. So it's like you're starting at a higher level of health to begin with. And so you can be a little bit more cavalier. And I do think it is somewhat, we are as a society, I mean, not this year, obviously there's been 3 deaths already in this measles outbreak, but in general, we don't see the day-to-day harms of vaccine preventable illness the way that our parents did and our grandparents did. I want to take one of these people and sit them down and say, I'm begging you to read any book about any person who lived before 1950. Yeah. Right now, for pleasure, I'm reading a biography of the art collector Peggy Guggenheim, a very wealthy, privileged woman born into a rich New York City family. This is not a science book, but just in recounting her young life. She and her sister had to be separated from each other for many months at a time because they both got whooping cough. And another sibling died young of a vaccine preventable disease. And they missed so much school. They had to be out of school for months and months and months. So this is a person who in her day, I think she was born in like 1895. In her day had the best medical care possible. And still these diseases massively affected her well-being, her day-to-day life, her family. So I'm just like, can you please read just one book, any book, a fun book? Like, it is that we have this distance from the real life impacts of not having vaccines and not having antibiotics. And
that's such an interesting little combination that you're describing, like kind of the entitlement or, you know, that of like, I should not be having an experience like this. Like I am a, whether they probably wouldn't say I'm a privileged person, but like, I'm not used to this, to people letting me down or endangering me the way that so many disenfranchised people are in this country. And the cavalierness. I mean, that's so interesting that like because you have the privilege of not just like your station, but also of like the generation you were born into, that it's easier to like fuck around with it. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Well, I want to there's a lot here. I think I want to talk about, we've kind of referenced the social media element. And Sarah Peterson, who wrote Momfluenced, has spent a lot of time on her Substack In Pursuit of Clean Countertops.
Friend of the pod,
looking into this. And I sort of see it as like a gonzo journalism level engagement with momfluencer culture that I respect and could never myself do. So
I think she'd be happy with that assessment.
I think so too. So she wrote this beautiful post about all of this titled "MAHA Moms Are Wrong About Wellness. Red dyes are bad, but maybe polio is worse." And she writes many brilliant things in this, but here's a quote that stuck with me. She said, "I like Rudy Jude's aesthetic, and therefore my brain tells me I should like everything about Rudy Jude, including her politics. This is the danger of communicating and making sense of the world through aesthetics. The MAHA agenda is remarkably easy to make look good. When a toxic ideology is filtered through nostalgic pastoral imagery, adorable children holding baby chicks, beautiful mothers feeding their children beautiful food in beautiful settings, it's hard not to assume that there's something right about these mothers' agenda. While the passions and complaints of MAHA moms vary, they are united in their mostly individualistic approach to health. It's difficult to argue that MAHA moms are spurred on by a consideration of collective wellness."
Yeah.
So at the same time, so my question here is like, we've talked on this show many times about how the experience of becoming a mother can really tap us into this very human need to give and receive care, and like the scales fall from our eyes and we realize that we are vulnerable and we need help and others need help and we need a village and all of this. And at the same time, modern millennial motherhood does seem to stoke like a fear-driven, anxiety-ridden kind of individualism. What do you think determines like which way we sway?
I mean, where do I begin? I mean, I think the internet and social media in general is a anxiety machine, right? The most negative, outlandish headlines, presentation, all of that just gets stoked. The other thing it is a validation machine. And so what the path that I often saw of people who had really gone down the rabbit hole of the anti-vax world, the scientific world might be cold to them, might doubt them, might ask questions. The anti-vax world is just like, oh, come on over. You're right. Everything you're saying is right. Your instincts are correct, mama. Like it's just giving you what you want to hear, even when it's not good for you. Right.
Even when every time someone says mama, you just get like a dopamine hit and you got to do it again.
And obviously, I think you're way more susceptible to this if you don't have a community in person. I became a mom in 2012, and I'm often grateful for just starting before Instagram became a thing, before online advice. It was obviously already there, but it wasn't so frequent and contradictory and overwhelming. I had a really tough pregnancy. And so I made a conscious decision that I would basically not read any mom content at all. None. Zero.
Bravo.
When my kid was a baby, if I had a question or concern, I would ask my mom. And so I'm lucky to have a really good relationship with my parents and to trust them and their physicians. So that was the other thing. It was like if I had a medical issue, I could trust them to know. And I had one book, and it was the Mayo Clinic's Guide to Your Baby's First Year. And that was it. I was like, I am going to follow my own instincts about what I think is right, and also not get all worked up about decisions that I know are not that big a deal. So the one that I talk about in my book that I've seen people lose their minds about is when you introduce cow's milk to your child. If you're going to introduce cow's milk to your child. So there's first decision point.
I hate that. I hate that whole thing. It's like, when are you doing milk? It's like, I'm not doing milk.
Right.
Like, you don't have to do milk.
I have seen people lose their minds over, should I do skim milk? Should it be whole milk? And it's like, literally, it really is not that big a deal.
No
Whatever you decide, your kid will be fine. It's part of a whole big diet over weeks and weeks and months and years and years. And I think it is very easy to lose sight of risk level on the internet. And so you can make anything seem like it is this huge consequential decision because of the bad incentives of algorithms. Whereas in parenting, in life, most of your micro decisions, each little one is not that big a deal. I still remember, for an entirely separate thing having nothing to do with parenting, I interviewed a really prestigious doctor of health and wellness, someone who's like commentated, and he said there's 5 things that if you do, you will be pretty healthy. Eat mostly whole foods, exercise regularly, wear a seatbelt, wear sunscreen, don't smoke. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. My kids didn't smoke till at least preschool. So I felt like I was doing the best I could.
Yeah, I think the rule is like 2 years without screens, and then at 3 you can introduce cigarettes. Yeah. Or.
Right. So it's like, I think that there is a way that we're just so bombarded with so much information, it can make small decisions seem so momentous in a way that they just aren't.
Yeah.
And obviously consistency matters. I'm not saying parental involvement doesn't matter. Like, it does. But I think that there is a way where the internet makes it seem like these things have more risk than they do. I will also say that the anti-vaccine message is so clear and so easy to argue, which is vaccines are dangerous, don't take them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the pro-vaccine movement, if they're being honest, and if you're being an honest scientific communicator, there's caveats. There's always caveats. Yes, some people do have very, 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 very few have bad reactions to the measles vaccine. That is absolutely true. To deny that makes you incorrect. But they can seize on that real, honest scientific communication to say, like, look, they're trying to cover something up. It does have bad outcomes. And again, it's this ignorance of risk-benefit analysis. Because everything you do is a risk-benefit analysis, right?
Yeah, something I notice in the MAHA movement, like if you look at kind of like the list of complaints about health, is kind of the mushing together of absolutely different sized problems.
Yes.
School lunch, I think, is a legitimate problem that needs solving. School lunch is not great, and like, I think I love free school lunch programs. I think it's like obviously a net benefit to just give this food to all kids. And like, you can't make great food for like 50 cents a meal.
Yeah.
Right. And so that feels like a big thing that would impact a lot of people, a lot of children. Right. And so comparing that to something like, red dye number 69 or whatever that's like used in one thing, it feels insane to me. But it does feel like all of those things kind of come at the same volume for these folks. And that speaks to your kind of, it's almost like a, steroids version of this phenomenon that many parents feel, which is like not knowing how important one individual thing is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
And I just want to make clear, I don't blame anyone. The information is everywhere and confusing. Even I sometimes am like, I'm, a journalist who has covered this for, 15 years. And sometimes I read about a topic and I'm like, I literally don't know what to think. I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from this.
Absolutely.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the choice is to make.
Yeah.
So I don't want that to sound like it's coming from a place of judgment or condescension. It is legitimately hard to make many decisions these days.
No, and I
lot of
relate a
different
lot to
things.
like the seeds of the MAHA concerns, right? Like, reading RFK's stuff about, childhood, he would call it mental illness or disability or whatever. Like, I'm an ADHDer. I work with lots of kids with ADHD. Like, I don't think it's great that our first line of treatment is putting kids on meds. I think meds can be really helpful for a lot of people, but I wish we had families want other interventions and other support, and we don't give it to them as a government. So like, I agree with the basic idea that that's a problem, but it's the solutions often that, that where I diverge. And often
you don't
that
want
is
to send them to the wellness farm.
Exactly, right? It's like this.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, I want to jump in because we were talking before we started recording about a listener and friend of the pod, Ariana Hendricks, who writes about, she's an expat living in Norway and has for more than a decade. And we told her we were going to make an episode about this topic, and she made a wonderful point, which is that a lot of these MAHA moms who complain about things like red dye, which is valid. I mean, right? Like, they make some valid complaints about our industrial food system and regulatory shortcomings. And they often look to Europe as like, oh, they don't even allow this in Europe. This is banned in Europe. Like, starbursts are colored with a different dye in Europe. But her point was that, well, yeah, that's because of regulation, like government regulation. And so how do you justify aligning yourselves with the party of deregulation when what you're calling for comes through, government action? And this recently, there was also this long, I think, NPR conversation with Melinda Gates about the limits of philanthropy and kind of her experience of learning how essential government is in implementing public health measures like vaccination and food regulation. And she was kind of making the point that like just a bunch of money can't necessarily solve this. You need structure. You need government structure.
You need structure, but you also need a society that actually values children and their health and well-being. And so,
but don't MAHA moms say that's what they're doing?
No, but it's,
right.
Exactly as you're saying, it is a whole system that is not just one individual thing. So one thing I've written about before is the built environment of the United States, where everything is car-centric. It is very hard to live in, almost nowhere can you live in a place where you can let your kids go to the park by themselves, walk to the park by themselves, give them the kind of independence and free play in a public area, because it doesn't exist, because we haven't built it. So like, that's like literal building. But all of this stuff creates a whole attitude towards children. And I just wrote about that this week in terms of AI regulation. Is there a way to perfectly regulate social media and AI? Absolutely not. Is the United States not even trying? Not even trying one bit. Our own legislators, and this is bipartisan, so I'm throwing the Democrats in the trash pile here, too. They just are like, it's too complicated. We're asking the people from OpenAI and the other AI companies to help us draft this legislation. It's like, you're letting the wolves into the hen house? Get a clue. Like, learn what these systems are. These people are so incredibly powerful. And Europe, because they care about the rights of children, and, they listen to the United Nations and UNESCO and all of the, international bodies that talk about children's mental and physical health, which we do not. We're trying to distance ourselves from all of those organizations. They've come up with regulation about AI. And they've come up with social media regulation, and those companies hate it, and good. It's just like, we can't conceive of a way to put our own citizens first without considering these corporations as people, basically. And so it's a whole, you have to talk about all of this as completely systemic.
Yeah.
And I know that's sort of, I feel like I've gotten a little bit far afield, but do you know what I'm trying to say?
No.
Yeah,
Like,
I was going to say, like, this, this season of the show, we had Katie Beck, who designs child-friendly cities at the London School of Economics.
Oh, amazing.
She's so cool. She works with municipalities around the world on projects kind of like the care blocks, in Bogota. And we also had Eloise Rickman, who wrote a book called It's Not Fair about children's rights. And from her, we learned that the U.S. is one of the countries that has not chosen to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is very broad and basic about what children are, deserve.
Okay, I almost wrote a piece about this year, and then I was like, there's just been too much news.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's more than 10 states where you still are allowed to beat children in public schools?
From being in the special education world, I do know that.
I mean, when I tell most people who are not as knowledgeable as you, their minds are, I live in New York. It's been illegal here for a very long time.
Yeah. And it happens too. It's not just like one of those laws no one knows about.
Oh, no, it happens all the time. I mean, there was a
kids.
horrible case in Florida where they beat an 18-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
It's really
what
sick.
Are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what are we doing? Yeah. And we're
so
not,
put me in the mind of like a MAHA mom, like, okay, help me make this transition, like with I don't know, empathy is there or understanding is because. So I was listening to the podcast Diabolical Lies did a MAHA Moms episode. It was really well researched and great. And one of the things they kept coming back to is like, whose kids are these moms talking about? And so, when they're talking about keeping kids safe, and I mean, because that's their big platform, right, is kind of something related to what you're saying, even though the actions are different, which is that like we have to protect children and take care of children. And what the Diabolical Lies hosts were talking about is like, they don't mean everybody's children, and the kids that are actually harmed by the most and at most risk for the things that they're upset about are not their children, are not white, wealthy, resourced children. And so I understand how like right-wingism kind of steers you away from like universal health care or, better WIC programs as an intervention. But how do these people reconcile the fact that like they are talking about all children as if they really mean all children, but actually only caring about, really usually upper middle class white children?
I mean, I don't think that they...
Or do they not know?
Well, okay. So I think one thing is like they have their own set of facts. I've tried to like have straightforward conversations with people about the risks of vaccines when we don't agree. And like they just have wrong, debunked, like they're looking at studies that are limited, or they are just absolutely wrong, or they are framing things in a truly sinister way. So this is a thing that I'm thinking about including in my piece that I'm writing next week about, the latest with RFK. I saw one of these anti-vax moms that I had been following for like 6 years talk about the new measles outbreak. And she had the correct information about the death rate of measles for unvaccinated children, which is 1 to 2 per 1,000. But she framed this in a slide on Instagram as a low death rate. My kid's elementary school has about 900 kids in it. If one of those healthy kids dropped dead, it would be a tragedy, a disaster that doesn't just happen in, the year 2025 in a developed country. And so the sort of cavalier, oh, that's low. That's not low. Right. And also this sort of idea that like a lot of times I see them say, well, they had a pre-existing condition. So what? Like they deserve to die of measles? Like what a dark
that's what they
and
say about
sinister framing. Like
kids who live in poverty.
Yeah.
Essentially,
It's just,
they're saying,
yeah. So there's sort of like this low-key eugenicist vibe. But also,
eugenics.
I mean, some of them, and like, again, this is a pretty broad movement. It's millions of people. I don't want to sort of say everyone is like this, but you saw this in family, one of the families whose child did die in this outbreak. They were like, well, it's God's will. I still don't trust the vaccines. Yeah. And so when your orientation is that everything that happens is God's will. Yeah. Like, I don't know. There's no arguing with that.
This came up in Amanda Hess's book about the free birthers. Right. That I forget the exact quote, but it was basically speaking to one of these people. And it was like, well, if I die or if the baby dies, that's, you know, that's God's will. That's meant to be. That's also free. That's natural. And it's okay. I mean, I do think that also ties back to what we were talking about earlier about I'm interested in the center of the Venn diagram, right? Where we agree, right? It's like with these people. And I wonder if that's the place of connection. Can we connect? Can we get back some of these women, right, who are disenfranchised in a way that is relatable, where it's like, okay, sure, yeah, postpartum care is severely lacking. Okay, yeah,
let's regulate big pharma. Yes, please.
Right, yeah. Right. And also like our food system sucks and it's not serving us. And but then so that point of empathy, which kind of sometimes gives me the weirds, right? Like when I'm nodding along and I'm going, actually, do I agree with this person? And then they say something where I'm like, whoa, nope, I don't. I vaccinate
No, it's
my
like,
kid.
have you ever been like in line at the post office and another white person, people need to know about this, is like talking to you about something normal. And then this has happened to me a few times, and then like says something racist coded. And you're like, this, sometime I was at the post office and this has happened to me, like waiting for the train. It's wild. And you're like, oh my God. But where we're like talking about how long the lines are. And then all of a sudden they're making some comment that like refers to the ethnicity of the people working there. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I am not nodding along to that. That's kind of how I feel about the MAHA stuff. Is I'm like, yep, I'm with you. And then it's like, wait, no, I thought we were going to, So I thought we were going to like food deserts. I thought we were going to healthcare for all.
Well, and I think that, so here's what I'm interested in. Right?
I don't want to do this.
We do agree about problems, and then we disagree about how we solve it, right? And
we agree about some of the problems.
And I think that like the question of, let's use the vaccine example. And like you become a mom and you love this creature so much and it's overwhelming and it's a little bit scary and you're responsible for them. And the reality is that the world is a scary place and you don't feel safe and you don't feel that you can protect your baby from microplastics or crappy air quality.
Yeah, I don't like microplastics.
Or, you know what I mean? Like you can't control that, right? Like you read things and you're like, your baby has microplastics in them. They arrive with plastic in them, right? And you can't do anything about that. But you can choose to not vaccinate your kid. So you're like taking the control that you have in a system that gives you very little choice. And also in a like climate moment and like you say, built environment that doesn't give you a lot of choice about what kind of childhood your precious beloved baby has. Yeah. And so I wonder about, and of course, American individualism is like powerful. This is like a big problem some of us feel in our kind of like country's mentality, right? Like so so I wonder though, is there a way that people who think the way that we think about like collective good and how we get there to access these people? Or is like the Christian nationalism thing just like this impossible barrier?
I don't think it's an impossible barrier. Again, this is fringe. Most Republicans vaccinate their children. Most Christians vaccinate their children. This is not, it is mainstream only because Trump has put the least qualified person to run HHS possibly in the country. I would literally
talking about Bobby.
Rather pick somebody off the street. Literally, the next person walking down my block, I would prefer over. I'm not joking, because he has shown himself to be anti-science in so many ways. He's cutting I mean, don't get me started. So I will say, this is from something that Paul Offit, who is one of our foremost vaccine experts, has said to me in my reporting. The first time he said to me, 15 years ago when I started talking about this and writing about this, 10 to 15% of vaccine skeptics are gone. You cannot reach them. They are true believers. That's it. Then you have, I don't know exactly what it is, 80, 85% of people who can be convinced if they are not forced. So, someone being condescending to them, a New York Times writer writing something about how you should vaccinate their kids. They don't care about that. It is going to have to come from people that they know in real life, in their own communities, who have real relationships with them and that they love and trust. So, you know, their pediatrician, their relatives, like they might still dig in their heels, but over time, and also seeing like when there are outbreaks like the ones in Texas, a lot of people who might have been on the fence say, yikes, this is real. Again, there is this sort of like, because people haven't seen it for a long time, they don't really think it's coming back. They don't think it's possible. And I talked to, it didn't actually end up in the story, but I had a long interview with a doctor in West Virginia. And so most of the people that he sees are Republicans, are conservatives. And he said he's seen, you know, a ton more vaccine skepticism over the past 5 years than ever before. And it really was COVID. COVID broke a lot of people's trust. COVID made people feel coerced in a way that they didn't like. And again, I can't identify with it, but I intellectually understand how they got there, right?
Yeah.
Like because they felt that they couldn't, like because places required them to like proof of vaccination.
Because they felt this is this new unproven thing. I'm not, what a lot of people have said to me in my reporting specifically about the COVID vaccine. So I did this whole piece in like 2021, I guess, about parents who were not anti-vaccine, but they did not want to get the COVID vaccine for their kids. And most of it was like, I don't want my kid to be a guinea pig. I don't, you know, maybe I'll feel comfortable in 2 or 3 years, but I don't feel comfortable now. And I get it. Like, and especially, honestly, a lot of people of color who I spoke to, especially who are familiar with the way that their communities had been tested. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that that has bled into distrust of other vaccines.
Right. Well, I have this fantasy, and I mean, who knows when it would ever be realized, that if the government did a better job of, you know, handling things like that and doing the kinds of interventions that we're talking about, you know, better public health care, you know, school lunch, all of that stuff, that there would be a chunk of people who would be able to trust the government more and kind of see that if we had more programs like some of these Scandinavian countries that both sides reference, you know, with total arbitrariness, that, you know, that people would be able to see that. But I understand that when the government isn't doing a great job at these things, it's really hard to trust them, you know?
Yeah. And so
I felt that way in COVID sometimes too.
Totally. I mean, I felt frustrated in many ways, and I felt like I wasn't, and I wrote about this, you know, I did not understand why we were masking kids under 5 when literally no other country in the entire world did that.
Oh, Jess, that was like my one moment of feeling like like a weird right-wing person, kind of later in the pandemic, you know, and I was like, oh my God, because it's so identity driven, like now I'm that kind of person. But the evidence was not good.
I was hearing from all of these early childhood educators that it was hurting kids' speech.
Yeah. Yep.
And I had a child under 5 at the time, and I was like, she's not wearing the mask. She can't wear the mask right because she's 3.
Yeah, they're like hanging down off their noses and getting sucked on. And
I think that like a lot of totally sensible people had a lot of normal questions that I think our public health infrastructure did a very bad job answering in good faith. And so I'm not saying that anyone has been perfect. I'm saying like you actually have to build trust with people. And it happens at many levels. And I think that the best way to build trust is locally and in person. And there's so many ways that I've seen my own arguments twisted in a way that just is so dispiriting, honestly, because I don't always succeed, but I do try really hard to consider the other argument against whatever I'm arguing and really weigh it and take it seriously and respectfully. And so it's just like you can say a lot of things on the internet and have them just be completely wildly misinterpreted in a bad faith way, in a frustrating way. So I think for things to be effective and to change minds and hearts, there are things on the internet that can help a little bit, but I think it has to be real in-person community connection. And God bless like all of the pediatricians who are doing this every day. Every
having
single day
like
in their
real
clinic,
conversations. Yeah.
like they're having these conversations, and I would not have the patience for it. So like, I don't like, I'm not the person to have these conversations because I will just get too frustrated. Like, you know, I've really, I'm better in writing in terms of like frustration. So I've tried, when people have DM'd me, I have actually tried to have these conversations with people, and hopefully they help. I don't know. Maybe they just still think I'm a jerk, but I do my best to say, I hear you, but here is the actual facts. Like, what you're saying isn't true. And sometimes they're like, well, I don't trust any of those sources either. And then I'm like, okay, well, I tried, you know, like I had an opportunity and I'm trying.
I kind of
anybody can
am sick of like people talking about how polarized we are. And like, I think there's also a way that conversation makes things worse. And like, I also think I'm hearing in what you're saying and in the piece about like being someone who was generally like identified with the left's response to COVID, but then seeing that like the masks under fives things didn't make sense, was like all of a sudden the people that I identify with, you know, are, you know, really don't get what I'm saying and are kind of rejecting me.
I got called a eugenicist on the internet for months after writing that piece. So it's what it is. It's an occupational hazard.
And then you're like, well, these guys over here will accept me. You know, if I was a different kind of person, it would be like, well, like, you know, all of these people that I thought were my friends, you know, are like calling me horrible names for just suggesting that one thing might not make sense. So now I'm going to go over to these guys and they have some other weird shit, but you know.
I mean, I think part of the problem also is like there is no clear line anymore between public speech and private speech. So
it's like what we were talking about social media.
Right.
Almost,
so I'll write something and a stranger can be like, you're a eugenicist. And I'm like, okay. Like it doesn't, I have such a thick skin about that stuff from like, you know, my first job was on writing on the internet after I graduated from college. So it's been like, guys, it's been 20 years of this. Like, do better.
Right.
If you're going to really get under my skin, you have to like go deeper.
Right. But if other
it.
parents at your kid's preschool call you a eugenicist,
exactly.
It's uncomfortable.
It's different.
It's uncomfortable. No one did that.
We're in like, you know, all of us are in media. And I think that, you know, that is, we're having a moment and like, it's really tough, I think, right now to think about the flow of information and like how these, like you say, people who have ideas that are, you know, from our perspective, not rooted in reality and like, but they can easily go online and find a lot of validation and find community and they're off to the races. And I think like, I don't certainly personally understand yet how we combat that as a culture and society when there is this whole world happening and thinking about communication during COVID. Like, you know, it was also, I don't want to let the government off the hook, but like it is, I don't think we understand yet how to get into some of these streams and disrupt like misinformation. Or, you know, if you're working for Donald Trump, you know how to get into those streams and
or Meta, you know, there's many forces that are, you know, happily promoting misinformation. So,
so
it's a hard fight.
There was no way we were going to have a global pandemic and not have huge societal disruptions, pain, you know, millions of people died. Like, I think that there is sometimes when I'm having these conversations, which I do a lot about COVID learning loss and education, it's like this fantasy that we could have gotten through this with like minimal damage is just like, we could have done better on a lot of things, but there was no way of getting through this without some, you know, pain. It's a pandemic. Like that's real.
I appreciate that. Necessary losses.
I always want to like level set back to that. It's like, it was never going to be good. I do think, you know, sometimes, you know, the strength, weakness of the United States in particular, our individualism, our diversity. There's so many different kinds of people in the United States, which makes us great. And I don't think American individualism is all bad. I think there's a lot of good to it. But there's always a downside to sort of every quality, right? And I think the diversity and size of our country makes the communication environment especially challenging. Because I think if you have a more homogenous society, it's easier to get them to all agree to do a thing. So I just think in so many, listen, I cite those damn Nordic countries all the time. I'm sick of Finland. Like, I get it, but it's also like, what do they have? What, 10 million
people? One more thing
yeah.
about how great Finland is.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now. How many people live in Finland?
Like 12.
They also have don't they have very, very, very strict immigration policy? So they
5.5 million people. That's fewer than live in New York City. Okay. So yes, getting under 6 million people to do one thing is a much easier task. And to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, it's not saying people looking at them and seeing what they do and trying to replicate it in a way that makes sense for the United States does make sense, but it's never going to be one-to-one. We are such a different country, I think, kind of than anywhere else.
Even geographically, right? I think about, a lot of times I joke, semi-joke, not really joke about West Coast secession, all the time. I'm to my husband, I'm that's I'm holding out for that, because I'm why should someone in Alabama decide what rights my daughter has? I don't understand that, honestly, on a kind of logical level. I'm this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, don't worry. States' rights is, well, I don't know, actually. I think states' rights is another thing they think that they say they want in order to have more federal control over everyone.
I don't know what's going on, but
I really do think I was not a person who in Trump's first term was that worried about fascism. I didn't like anything that was going on, but to me it was not there yet. I feel very differently this time around.
Oh, yeah.
I think what's happening is terrifying.
Yeah.
And part of what's terrifying is we really just don't know what is going to happen next. What other system he's going to try to just completely dismantle. This week we've been seeing so many attacks on higher education. And the thing that galls me about that, I was just thinking about it today. They all send their kids to these elite institutions. They all went to them, but they could say, oh, no, they're evil now. They weren't evil when I went. You literally send your children there. So it's not Barron's at NYU, a real conservative place. What are we doing? It's just so petty and nonsensical and destroying something that was kind of our scientific and medical research was the envy of the world. And you're destroying it because you're having a tantrum. It's just
in the matter of weeks.
It's not just bad. It also makes no sense even for Republicans. Republicans all gloried in this great thing that we've done as a society. It's just, honestly, it's uncharted territory. It's a cliche, but it just really is.
Well, I'm working on a piece right now about mothers moving to Europe, kind of looking at it from many angles right now, but it's something that's bubbling in circles. I'm sure both of you have that going on in chit chat. People who have pathways out are pursuing those. And I was talking to some people for the piece yesterday, and it's been on my mind too, but they brought up real concerns about a big American brain drain, because doctors can easily move, they're a high skilled profession and they can bounce pretty easily to a different country and where they're wanted. And the same goes for people who would come to our country, like you say, to study at these institutions and then might stay. And then we'd have this incredible scientific community and medical community. And as our country becomes hostile to these ideologies, I mean, why would any of these people come and certainly come and stay?
I actually don't. Jess, I think it is sensical or whatever. I think that that these folks know exactly what they're doing, even if it seems chaotic to us. The idea, talking about the MAHA movement, the idea of simultaneously defunding and kind of discrediting research and science and higher education feels perfectly in line with everything that RFK is trying to do, right? That it's really the easiest way to fulfill those goals is to have kind of less of that so that we can have more of fucking supplement company owners pretending that they're doctors. It's it all makes sense to me if you like see the world that way, which is maybe more disturbing than thinking about it as hodgepodge.
I mean, it just all goes down to them wanting to be the ultimate deciders, and whatever they decide, everyone has to fall in line. And I think this sort of chaos is part of that.
Right. Well, it's also where I mean, you were talking about contradictions and hypocrisy, which is so rampant, and the kind of like even the individualism piece, like in the higher education stuff, is like, okay, if you really believe in individual choice, why are you making it law that universities can't have, cultural centers, right? Why does it need to be a law that they are not allowed to have a Black student union? In your parlance, it should be a choice. So it's all, yeah.
Well, so Jess, you don't know the future, but what do you think on a, personal level, what can moms like us, and I think our listeners, what can we do? These are women that we have a lot in common with, right? Like we do. And so
we shop at West Elm with these bitches.
Yeah, and I want to hear them. I think that they have a fear that is real. And I get it. And then I want to I want to make it better. I want our country to be better too. And so can we find a way forward, or is all lost?
I think we'll definitely find a way forward. I think in this particular moment, it's going to be tough because they are, our leaders are trying so hard to polarize us and to set us against each other. But I think there's a lot of strange bedfellows to be made right now, because I think more and more people are falling away from that movement, not specifically MAHA, but, various people who maybe voted for Trump but were on the fence about it, or happily voted for him and are now like, whoa, I didn't think it was going to be like this. And I think like the first thing is not shaming them. We can't control other people shaming them on the internet, but like if someone in your life is willing to come over, just be like, that's great. Let's figure out what we can work together on. And I see that with, I write a lot about child care policy and parental leave policy, and there is some consensus among ideologically different people about this kind of thing. So, you have the super hardcore right-wing people who think women shouldn't work and don't ever want to be able to fund any kind of childcare because they think that it's against God's plan. Those people cannot be talked to. We're not going to get anywhere with them. But there are people who are conservative, but they believe in fiscal responsibility and they think women should work to support their families and no one gets a free lunch. And so they are motivated to come to some kind of childcare policy because they understand that it is economically important. They don't care about that it helps families so much. Maybe they care a little bit, but they're hearing from their not liberal constituents that childcare is the biggest barrier to them being able to support their families. And that can be nonpartisan. That doesn't have to be partisan, right? So I think as things get more and more extreme and wacky and nonsensical, I mean, that's the thing too. It's like, they don't even, people who care just voted for Trump because of the economics. They are not happy right now, right? So can some of them get picked off to work together on being on reasonable stuff that reasonable people can all agree on? Vaccines are one of those things. Like I said, the first thing I said, 90% of people still vaccinate their children. Can we get 90% of Americans to like do anything? So I always
watch Squid Game, I think.
I describe myself as sort of like a cynical optimist because I do always am trying to find that like glass half full, hopeful work to do. And I believe it. It's not put on. But I that's where I see possibility. Because again, me, who would be seen by some of these people as like a communist, whereas in Brooklyn, I'm like Marjorie Taylor Green. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Like, no, I'm definitely, but I'm like, I think I am considered a moderate. I would definitely be considered a moderate in my milieu. And to them, I'm like a communist agitator.
Right.
So I'm not going to be the one who convinces MAHA moms, no matter what I particularly say.
I feel like there's promise
saying it.
in my going undercover in Moms for Liberty and, you know, starting some happy hours and just seeing what happens.
But again,
I have to get
what drives me crazy about Moms for
Bob.
Liberty, most of those people homeschool their children. They have never interacted with the public school system.
Yeah.
It drives me bananas.
Yeah.
They either homeschool their kids or send them to Christian academies. And if they actually interacted with the public school system, they would not think half of the things that they think.
Yeah, I try to get the public school system to indoctrinate my kids all the time. And they're like, we have to teach math and reading. It's really annoying.
Yeah, I mean, also the thing that always bothers me about that, it's like, I think they don't understand. I think that their agitating is counterproductive because I think when something is overwhelmingly taught by authority figures, kids instinctively rebel against it anyway. So I often think that I went to an extremely liberal college, and sometimes I think it made me slightly more conservative than I would have been because everyone was so annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like, I don't know if that says anything good about me, but I was just like, God, these people are so unrealistic and annoying, you know? So I think the idea that like, even if they were indoctrinated with this stuff, that it would just be a uniform brainwashing instead of necessarily a turnoff to some kids. Like, I'm like, use your brain, actually engage with what's happening in the classroom, which you have no idea about since you weren't public school educated, your kids weren't. Like, you're not in these systems and you critique them as if
I'm just
you know
laughing
what's going
thinking
on.
about like an illicit copy of a Maya Angelou book now being passed around in the like barracks of the Air Force, you know,
right?
Since it's been banned, is like that is going to be like the hot ticket item.
I know. I mean, also like,
2025
I'm just
now.
like, have you seen the statistics? You should just want kids to read any full book. If a kid is reading any book, no matter how smutty, you should be happy. They aren't reading. Like,
yeah, not to worry. Well, so speaking of books, we always wrap with asking our guests for culture recommendations. So it can be a book that you've loved, or it can be like a movie or a silly show. It doesn't have to be serious, but it can be if you want.
So kind of like everyone else, I have just become obsessed with The Pit. It is as great as everyone says. Like, I'm
what
so
is that?
into it.
It's the new ER guy show.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, the
It's
Noah
a medical
Wiley
drama.
Yeah.
So the reason I like it so much is I think it is the first show I've ever seen that was built with streaming in mind. So the structure of the show, I think it's 17 episodes. Each episode is an hour long and represents 1 hour of the same day in an ER in Pittsburgh.
Megan O'Connell just recommended this as well to me. She's obsessed, and she likened it to 24, which I was like, that's an old reference. And I was like,
right.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, because of the way we watch TV now, you can kind of dip in and out of it. And you can kind of stop it anywhere. You don't have to stop it at the end of the episode. You can stop it in the middle of an episode, which has, you know, fellow moms who like, I can't most nights get through an hour of TV.
Yeah,
I'm
when you
too
fall
tired.
asleep, you can just be like, okay.
Exactly.
What if you're the kind of person who faints when they get blood drawn? Can you watch the
this will
show?
not
I'm
be a show
asking
for you.
for a friend.
No, there
Okay.
is a lot of
Cool.
cutting of flesh and blood.
Oh,
and so,
just you saying that is like I'm starting
You
to
almost,
kind
like,
of
cover
see
your
spots.
eyes.
Yeah. So if that's you,
Okay, cool,
then it's
cool.
not the show for you. But
Yeah. I'm
am
happy with dying for sex. It's making me real happy.
Oh, nice.
Sex does not make me faint unless it's
so-
really good.
Both my parents were doctors, and my favorite take your daughter to work day was I saw my dad do a cath, which is a heart procedure. I loved it. The only reason I didn't become a doctor is because I did not want to give up my 20s. My parents were really funny. They were like, "Don't be a doctor. You had no lives." Like, you really like your entire 20s, like 22 to 28. Medical school, internship, residency, you are gone to society. I mean, they're very glad they did it. They were happy to be doctors, but they were like, don't be a doctor. So it was more like the sleep and the giving up of my 20s. I was not willing to do, but I'm like,
flesh.
I saw my dad do this procedure, and I was like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." I was so into it. So
wow, that's cool.
That's context for the pit recommendation. I feel it's like,
well, I'm always like, when journalists start getting sent to the gulag in 18 months, maybe I'll go become a nurse.
There you go. Yeah. Healthcare is, always a...
Yeah, you'll be doling out oils, essential oils and vitamins to all your patients.
God.
Yeah, it's just like so and bleak, guys.
Beef tallow bombs.
Well, on that disgusting note, Jess, thank you for joining us. This was really validating and satisfying, and I feel not totally depressed.
Good.
So, yeah.
Honestly, that's winning right now.
Yeah.
We'll try to adopt your sin optimism mentality.
Well,
it's a good one.
I have a very sort of eternal view. People are always people. And we have new modern problems that we paste onto them. But like at our core,
people gone people.
We're all going through the same things in just a different costume.
Yeah.
In every generation. So again, that could really depress you, or it could be like, we can solve problems. We have solved problems in history. So
yeah. Right. Yeah. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was like, when I get overwhelmed with the news, I like either zoom way in or I zoom way out. And he was like, I zoom way into like my immediate neighborhood, and like I go for a walk and I talk to people I know, or I zoom way out and I think like about the state of the globe, like the whole world and what everyone is going through.
I really like that framework. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
It helped. It helped.
I mean, it's so corny, but honestly, just like going to do stuff with my kids is always like a corrective. And I think about, most days I pick my younger daughter up from school, and just like I think about the moment where we initially make eye contact with each other and how happy we both are. And it's like, I have that every day. No matter how bad the day is, it's like, I get to see her, be so happy to see her, and her little face is so cute. And like, and I'm excited to like hear about what she did that day and spend the next hour, cooking dinner and hanging out. Like, the simple pleasures of life will always be there for us, hopefully.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
It's corny, but it does work for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Same. Well, thank you so much. Come back anytime.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Mother of It All. And like my mom always said, if you get your shot, you can have a lollipop.
The Mother of It All is produced by Opus Nox Media with music from It's Electric. If you liked this episode, why not send it to a friend right now? Go on. We'll wait. You can follow us on Substack at themotherofitall.substack.com, where subscribing will get you episodes and bonus posts in your inbox and connect you with the Mother of It All listener community. Plus, become a paid subscriber and get a hot off the presses Mother of It All canvas tote. We're also on Instagram at The Mother of It All, and you can email us anytime with ideas or feedback at motherculturepod@gmail.com.